Hi, my name is John, and today we're in the cockpit of the Mi-24P again. In this video I wanted to show you how to use the Shturm Anti-Tank missiles. And this is part 1 of a 2-part series. And in part 1 we're going to use Petrovitch AI, which is our simulated observer and gunner in front there. And in part 2 we will do everything by ourselves. But with Petrovitch it's a bit easier, although it's again a bit more complicated. So it's just one way to do it, and in this video we wanted to start with that. So currently I'm sitting at the FARP, the helicopter is started up and basically ready to go. But before we take it into the air, I wanted to check a couple of button assignments in the control setup. And you needed to assign about 6 buttons for this to work, and the first 2 can be found under Mi-24P Sim. And the first button is the Fire Shturm button, which by default is right control and space on the keyboard. And you might want to assign that to a button on your joystick that is convenient to reach. Then the next button you want to assign, again under the Mi-24P Sim menu, is the Show Hide menu button, and by default it's left control V. And probably want to do that onto some more accessible key as well. And then the other 4 buttons you need to assign, they're in a different sub-menu. They're under Mi-24P AI Menu. So you have to select that from the list on the top left. And then you want to assign menu down, menu up, menu left and menu right. And if you assign all those 4 to some more convenient keys like a hat or something on a joystick, it's probably a lot easier to operate and communicate with your AI gunner. So after getting that out of the way, we will take the helicopter into the air, and once I'm in the air I will talk to you again. Okay, welcome back. Currently the helicopter is in an active pause state, just for the purposes of this video. And we will get right into setting up the helicopter, and then we will unpause and fly our attack. Now, as a pilot in the back seat, we have to set up a couple of things for this attack to work. First of all, we want to turn on our sight, so we have the Rctrl in there. Then I also like to set it to auto range mode, our sight distance auto. It's not really required for the missiles to work, but I like to do it anyway. Then I also like to turn on the fire control, again not really required, but it's convenient for if you want to switch to guns or rockets later during the attack. And then you have to make sure that the fire control selector down here is in the off missile position. If it's not in the off missile position, Petrovitch in front cannot fire the anti-tank guided missiles, because the sight doors won't open and there is no way for him to fire. So that's very important. If you can't fire the missiles, or if Petrovitch can't fire the missiles, it's because, or likely because, this knob was not in the off position. And the last thing we need to do is switch the sight mode on the left here to the upper auto position. And in the auto position you get a second reticle, second crosshair, which will align with the sight line of the gunner's sight. So if the gunner aims to the left, we can see that the crosshair is on the left, so we can see where he's aiming. However, this only works if we're in the off position. If we switch to any other position on the mode selector down here, the crosshair will show the impact point or something else, depending on what weapon we have selected. So it's very important that we have that in the auto mode and the selector in the off position. And now there is some further step we need to do. We need to bring up the AI menu to talk to Petrovitch. And by default that's left control V, but you likely reassigned that to a button as I suggested earlier. So if we bring up the menu, we can see this crosshair in the middle, and we can see it's showing a number. On the bottom right it's the pitch, on the top it's the heading, and on the bottom left it's like the deviation to the left and to the right. So you can see, if I turn my head 90 degrees to the right, you can see right 90, left 90, 20, 30, 40 degrees up and 30 degrees down. So that's just a convenient way to know where you're looking. And you can also see that those numbers are in a box. Let me turn the head so you have a bit more contrast. So the box currently is red, and red means that the weapons are disarmed. And to arm the weapon, or to tell Petrovitch to arm the weapons, we have to hold the menu up button we reassigned earlier up long. So if you hold it up long, you can see it says turning on weapons and the box got yellow. And that means that Petrovitch will arm the weapons and then also spin up the gyros for the sight. And those need about 3 minutes to spin up, 3 to 4 minutes to spin up and get ready to fire. So in that time we cannot use our anti-tank missiles, and we have to wait for them to spool up, or for the sight to spool up. So you better do this before entering the combat area, else you're gonna miss the action. And I will wait until the gyros are spooled up, and then we will meet again and talk again. Okay, we just now got the message weapons ready, and the box is turned from yellow to orange, or very light orange tone. And that basically means Petrovitch is now ready to fire the weapons. But he will not do so on his own, he will wait for our command. And before we commence our attack, let's talk about the commands we can give him. So we use the menu up key press long to arm the weapons, and if you use the weapons up key press long again, if you use it again, excuse me, you can see it says free fire, the boxes turn green. So this means that Petrovitch can engage the targets by himself. However, a lot of conditions need to be met. If you press it up long again, it says hold fire. And then Petrovitch can lock a target, and he will only fire the anti-tank missile when you tell him by using the fire Shturm key command, which is by default is Rctrl space we reassigned earlier. And for this attack we're going to use this mode because we need to align the helicopter quite precisely for the launches anyway, so we might as well tell him when we want to fire the missile. And to use or to tell Petrovitch to look for a target and lock a target, we will use the menu up short key command. So we just use menu up very briefly like I did now, and he currently says can't move sight yet. And that's just because he needs a couple of seconds to uncage the sight and start looking for a target. There you saw the crosshair. Let me remove the Petrovitch menu. You can see the crosshair is where he's looking with his sight right now. And if you bring the menu up again and I click somewhere else, he moves the sight there. And so that's the point where he's looking, and as soon as he finds the target, he will let you know, and a message on the top right appears. And for example, if we want him to stop looking for something, we use the menu down key command. And you can see the sight disappears and he says no target selected. Sometimes you need to press it a couple of times until it removes or goes away, but yeah, that's how you deselect the target. Now if there are multiple targets, again you tell him to look in a certain direction, and he takes a couple of seconds until he can move his sight. And then he will give you a list on the bottom of the screens with all the targets he found in that area. And you can use menu up and down to scroll through that list, and then menu right, which by default is the D key, to select the target, which he then will keep in his crosshair. So this all sounds a bit complicated, but it's easiest if you try it out, and we will try it out right away just to see how it works. And before we commence the approach, a couple of things I would recommend. And now, you can fire those Shturm missiles from a hover, technically. However, it's not recommended. The manual suggests an attack speed of 100 to about 300 or 250 kilometers per hour, and that's probably very advisable. If you fire from a hover, you're a sitting duck, and you have very little energy to evade if the target fires back at you. So it's easier to fly at a forward speed and fire from there, and then you have enough energy to fly an evasive maneuver once the missile has either hit the target or missed the target. Then another very important thing is that the sight is not stabilized. So there is some form of tracking and some form of stabilization, but it's not like a modern helicopter where it's ground tracking or ground stabilized. So as soon as the helicopter moves, the gunner has to counteract for that movement by manually counteracting that with the sight. So be advised that it's very important to keep the helicopter stable, else the gunner has no chance to hit the target. And also keep in mind Petrovitch in front there, he's a conscript soldier, probably afraid of heights, and he's not very good at gunning or guiding missiles. But yeah, just make it easier for him to keep the helicopter stable. And now once we start the attack, we have to keep the helicopter aligned, and to fire the missile we have to keep his crosshair inside the inner circle. And once that condition is met, we hear a tone in our headset, and he also hears that tone, and that means that the missile is within launching parameters. If we go outside that inner circle, we cannot fire the missile, because after launch it wouldn't guide, because the guidance can't steer it. It's also important you have to guide the missile all the way down to the ground, so the gunner needs to keep the crosshair on the target all the way down to the ground, and you also can't maneuver the helicopter too much. If you move too much, a red light will appear on the warning panel, and that means you have to turn back or the missile will lose track. But usually that's not the limiting factor. The limiting factor is the manual tracking, so you have to keep the helicopter at least somewhat very well aligned with the target. And also keep in mind, you can fire the missile at excessive range, basically as soon as Petrovitch sees the target. However, the energy of the missile won't be enough, and the missile will fall short. So the maximum range is about 5 kilometers, but Petrovitch will let you know once you're within guidance range or launch range. So let me deselect the target, unpause, and then we will fly towards the target. I'm trying to fly a speed of about 200 to 250 kilometers per hour, a slight dive, and the target is just ahead, somewhere around this airfield area near Batumi there. So let me unpause. Okay. Just let me get the helicopter stable, and I'm using the menu up key press short to tell Petrovitch that he should scan that area. He will let me know that he can't move his sight yet. He needs a couple of seconds, and now he has started looking, and now he has target selected, truck, so he found a truck, and that is our target today. And because it's the only target he found, we don't need to use the up or down to select the target. Now we can hide the menu just to make it a bit easier, and now you can see if the crosshair is within the circle, we get the launch tone. And we continue our approach like this, make sure we don't overspeed, and once he lets us know that we are within range, or maybe just in a couple of seconds, we will hit the fire Shturm button to tell him to fire the missile. Okay, he didn't let us know that we're within range yet. Oh, now there goes target in range. So I will hold down the button, and there goes the Shturm. And now we just have to keep the helicopter steady, monitor our speed, and hope Petrovitch hits the target today. And looks like we got a hit there. Target is burning, smoke is appearing, so we'll bring up the menu, tell him to deselect the target, and then we will break off our attack here. And the target is smoking in the distance. Nice. And yeah, that was an attack using Petrovitch. We will also look, as said before, at an attack not using Petrovitch, like you would do in a two-man cockpit, or for example if you decided to use the cockpit alone, or the helicopter alone, which however is not recommended. Just because using the helicopter alone with autopilot and firing from the front seat is very difficult, and you don't have any chance to maneuver in time if there's a counter-attack or something like that. Also important to note, if you start the helicopter from the air, the weapon panels most likely will have either the gun or the grenade launchers or rockets or whatever selected, so make sure that the weapon selector is in the off position and the mode switch is in the auto position, else you won't get the crosshair of Petrovitch and you won't be able to shoot your missile. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and the second part will be coming shortly. Have a great day and a nice flight.